I'm Blackish fam. I hope all is well in your corner of the world. Man, really excited to get into this one. This is Aesop Rock Cycles to Gehenna. And just ever since I did the breakdown for Cycles, I believe it was called Cycles, everyone's been telling me that there's some connection with this one. This is a song that Aesop did supposedly after one of his friends died. But I don't really know much about it. I know this is some of his older music, and I've been starting to really pick up on Aesop Rock and how he writes, and just get a better understanding of him as an artist. And man, it is incredible. I don't think I've ever come across an artist like this. Just intellectual, but just good at rapping, but it's not really a rapper. I wouldn't consider him a rapper, more of a hip hop head for sure. But I love hearing about him on bikes, skateboards, just the old art of hip hop, or what hip hop used to be, at least. So just really excited to get into this one. I don't really know much about it, but I was really excited to see that there's an actual official video. And for those that know, I get really excited with those because there's so much symbolism in some of his previous work that, you could really break down the videos in themselves. They're not always tied as closely as you would think to the lyrics in the track. But again, the lyrics are just up to interpretation. So, what do you get? And just a disclaimer, this is just my interpretation. I don't know if this is the factual interpretation of this song, but this is what it's going to mean to me, at least on the first time hearing it, right? And just so you guys know, if you're new to the station, if you're just looking to hear the track, this is probably not the best channel for you. We stop and break down lines and try to understand the context of what he might be saying. So we pause, go back, kind of brainstorm, and I really appreciate the feedback. So if I ask for help or you guys leave comments, I really love that. Really excited. You see, I got my comfy clothes on for this. Really excited to get into this. This is Aesop Rock, Cycles to Gehenna. And if you guys are fans of Aesop Rock, as I've become, and you like these breakdowns where we really dive into his lyrics, it really is a puzzle. Man, make sure to show some love, like the video, but subscribe to the channel as well. We've gotten into quite a bit of Aesop Rock's work, along with other artists, Lupe Fiasco, right? Toby Wigway, Marlon Craft, J. Cole, even some more mainstream artists. As long as there's lyrically dense content that we can really dive into, that's really what we look for on this channel. And we're trying to grow the channel as well. When I put the channel out almost immediately, we got to 1,000 subscribers, and I had to take some time off for work. But we're back. We're growing it. I think we just passed like 1,300 subscribers. So really trying to grow that so we can do this more full time and really start diving into a lot of this work. Time to get into it. I should have popcorn or something, I feel. Let's check it out. Ooh. Oh, I like that. That sounds different from... That beat kind of makes you feel like something's coming, right? Doom, 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 and I go, right, the jump scare. So, ooh, that's just...
Base heads locally approach all spark plugs. Total disregard board, 9-man shark jump. Post all spark plugs. Total disregard board.
He said base heads locally approach all spark plugs. I don't know if a lot of you guys are from the inner city, but base heads are pretty much crackheads. Crackheads, they bust into really anything, but when you talk about scooters, mopeds, motorcycles, they bust into those all the time, and they're looking to steal the spark plugs. And I think that's what he's getting at. It happens a lot in inner cities. I guess there's some part that they could use these insulators as a pipe, right? And so they're smoking out of these things. That, it's one of those things where they'll bust your whole window in a car just to steal a candy bar or so, right? There's just no respect for what you have. But I know a lot of people that ride motorcycles in an inner city. That's a big fear of theirs, that they're going to get their stuff busted into. But also the spark plugs in general. Again, I'm from an inner city. I'm from Chicago. But spark plugs, there's normally a ceramic piece on the back of the spark plug. A lot of criminals look for that in the inner city, because if you throw that and you hit, let's say, a car window, it's a good way to, what would you say? It's a quiet way of breaking a window. There's so much energy and it's so dense that when you hit the window, it just, and you could just, and you could bust a window out really easily. So a lot of thieves will seek out these spark plugs to use for criminal activity. Not as much as, they're not going to damage your motorcycle to get it, because you could get spark plugs pretty, you can get some pretty inexpensive if you know where to look. But there's definitely crackheads that are going for the spark plugs with motorcycles. The other thing too is there could be some wordplay here. When you think about bass heads, right? They're not talking about, right, like old house heads, as we used to call them in Chicago. It's not talking about that. Oh, I dropped my pen. But there could be an old reference there to Public Enemy. I don't know how old you guys are, if you guys remember Night of the Living Bass Heads, right? They were actually talking about the crack epidemic. And that's where he's also tying this back in, right? When you start talking about freebase, right? You're talking about crack cocaine. It was actually pretty funny because back in the day, this is like, who's that? MC Light, people that you might not, Flava Flav, the dude with the big clock. They have this video, and they're actually the video is supposedly in a place where it's the Audubon. It was at New York, I believe. It's a part of New York, but anyway. It's supposed to be where, what's his name? Malcolm X was assassinated. And they're doing this video, and MC Light is like, she's searching for these, what they call base heads. And they find Wall Street executives that are doing cocaine. But the whole play on it is supposed to be the way that drugs are looked at differently amongst black and white communities, right? And you see it even with the way that we prosecute and how much time you get if you're caught with cocaine, perico, what I'm saying, that white, versus the crack cocaine in the poorer communities. In fact, now that more affluent suburban communities are having a drug pandemic, now it's looked at really as a way where the government wants to get involved, but they didn't, and possibly even help contribute to that. So there's a lot in that, but it comes from Public Enemy. Of course, a hip hop reference there as well, but that's what he's talking about. Crackheads busting into your motorcycle or scooter to get your spark plugs and causing that much damage just for a quick high. Sick. And man, this is why I love Aesop Rock. We're 34 seconds in. 34 seconds in, and he's already said something that impactful that you can just really unpack, no pun intended, right? Wow, it seems louder, and I like it, but I feel like my headphones are always low, and I just like how this is just boom, ba-boom, all right? Let's run it back. I want to hear it again. I want to hear that beat drop.
Bass heads locally approach all spark plugs. Total disregard for a dying man shark jump. Post meridian, pretty tungsten attracts. And he wants pale horse, painted gun, metal, black face masking. Horn shelled ebony propeller hat, clubman's glove.
Wow, I'm kind of like zoning out looking at the video, but he just says so much within a short amount of time. I think he said total disregard, right? Total disregard for a dying man's shark jump. It's like, what? So maybe the disregard of these crackheads busting into or damaging someone's motorcycle. But jumping the shark, it's an idiom. This actually goes, again, the references are old school. It originated with Happy Days. I don't know if you guys remember the Fonz. Hey, the Fonz. I forget his real life name, but it's kind of funny that he's so goofy and uncool in real life. You see him in like Waterboy and things like that. I can't believe I don't remember his name. But anyway, the Fonz. This is actually when they were filming Happy Days. Sunday, Monday, happy days. Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. Thursday, Friday, happy days. The weekend comes. Dun, dun, dun. Spending all days with you. Right? That's the reference for those that might be younger. But anyway, there's a scene. Supposedly, Fonzie was a really good water skier. And so they tried to implement this into the show. I don't know. It's kind of goofy. It was a different time, but that's where the term became known, the idiom, right? It's doing something that used to be cool to really stay relevant, if you would. It's like attention seeking, but something that was popular or you thought would be popular, but it's not popular any longer. So total disregard for a dying man's shark jump. Maybe it has something to do with the motorcycle ride. Maybe this is something, I guess most people attribute motorcycle rides with like a midlife crisis or so, right? People jumping on the bike because they want that sense of freedom, that exhilaration that you get from like leaving your simple life behind. But let's let it ride and hear what he has to say.
Base heads locally approach all spark plugs. Total disregard for a dying man shark jump. Post meridian, pretty tungsten attracts. And he wants pale horse, painted gun, metal, black face masking.
Ugh, that's just such a powerful line because I think he's referencing the horsemen, right? The four horsemen of the apocalypse. And there's a different color associated with each one. But what did he say? He said post meridian. Post meridian it just means afternoon. It's actually why we use PM, right? So he said pretty meridian, and what he represented brought up tungsten. Tungsten, you don't. It's kind of hard to. I don't know what he's getting at here. It sounds like he's definitely on a scooter or a motorcycle, so that could be a reference. But tungsten is like a metal. It's like this grayish metal. I know it has a lot of strength. I think we use it for like heating elements. I believe that the filament inside of a light bulb, if I'm not mistaken, that's what it is. So I don't really know. What the meaning here is, but it's like what you would consider a super alloy. He tried to tie that. He said post meridian, but he said the tungsten, right? Let me just hear how he said it.
Hardboard dying man shark jump. Post meridian, pretty tungsten attracts. And he wants pale horse, painted gun, metal, black face.
Okay, so the once pale horse is now painted gunmetal black. So when you talk about riding a pale horse, again, this is the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Death is supposed to be riding a pale horse. I believe he's actually accompanied by Satan, which would make sense. The only real thing that I knew going into this is supposedly a song that he wrote when one of his friends died. I don't really know about that friend or how significant he was in his life, but it would make sense that he's talking about death, right? But you really go to think, it's a once pale horse, right? And maybe it's painted gunmetal black. Black could be signifying death, right, or a funeral, if you would. But why is he? Why is it covering it up, or why is it changing? Um, it's already death. Let me listen to it again.
They approach all spark plugs. Total disregard for a dying man. Shark jump. Post meridian. Pretty tungsten attracts. Anyone's pale horse. Painted gun. Metal black face masking. Hard shelled ebony propeller hat. Clubbins. Glove.
Ooh, you said a lot there. Let's run it back.
Base heads locally approach all spark plugs. Total disregard for a dying man. Shark jump. Post meridian. Pretty tungsten attracts. Anyone's pale horse. Painted gun. Metal black face masking. Hard shelled ebony propeller hat. Clubbins.
Oh, so he's talking. It seems like he's referencing some aspect of childhood, but he said face masking. I don't know if you guys are really familiar. This is beautiful lyrics, right? It just, this has got to be, for only being less than a minute in, this seems very descriptive, even for Aesop Rock. Because, when you say face masking, it's showing that he's emotionless, which would make sense if one of his friends died. It sounds like he's tired of living this hard life, right? It's hard shelled. He has a hard shell hat on. Kind of gives me the idea that there's something resilient about him, or something that's protecting him. Could be protecting his youth or protecting his innocence, right? Because, what does it say? It says face masking, hard-shelled ebony propeller hat. Propeller hat. That's you think of a kid, right? Or a go-go gadget hat, right? But it normally is meant to show childhood, all right, or something connected to childhood. But what I think is really interesting here is how he uses face masking. For those that don't know, facial masking is what they teach you when you start to learn about Parkinson's disease. Most people hear of like slurred speech and they associate that with someone that's having a stroke, right? And they lose, like their lip goes down, or they're slouching, one side of their face. But when you're talking about speech combined with facial masking, you're normally referring to Parkinson's disease. There's reduced facial expressions. There's a name for it, but it's the muscles of the face are stiff and they really can't move. So it makes it really hard to smile. You can't raise your eyebrows. It's really hard to express your feelings using your face. So the way you communicate to somebody with Parkinson's is very different because they have this emotionless look on their face, which would tie in well because if he's emotionless, he's just trying to zone out. It sounds like trying to get away from the fact that his friend died, right? But the thing that's somewhat confusing to me is the hard-shelled ebony propeller hat. What I don't really know is the right. It's obviously some childhood, but is it his childhood or is it the loss of a childhood friend? Right? Is it a symbol that he's losing something or trying to protect this memory of his childhood? Remember the memory of a childhood friend that he just lost, or is it like his own innocence? Hopefully we'll learn more about it as we go.
Gun metal black face masking, hard shelled ebony propeller hat, clubbins, glove breaks, grappling a clutch span.
Ooh, for those that have ever rode, now I used to have a Batavis. What was it? It was a moped though. When I was in much smaller days. But there's definitely a feeling of freedom that you get But you learn a little bit about these different. A lot of people know the major brands, right? Your Triumph and your Harleys, of course. But there's other brands that mean something, and a Clubman is one of those. It's a Clubman, and I don't know if he could be talking about the accessories because he's talking about um, what did he say? The gloved rakes, right? Gloved rakes, obviously meaning his fingers that are dealing with the clutch. So it could be a Clubman brand, but the Clubman motorcycle is a motorcycle they really only produced for 1 year. And it was a really sought after motorcycle. I believe it's called the Clubman. I don't really know too much about the brand other than that, but he could be referring to that. But maybe they have a spin off or accessories associated with that brand. And I would imagine that brand might be associated with those driving gloves or riding gloves.
Ebony propeller hat, clubbins, glove brakes, grapple and a clutch span. Tuck with a steel toe, metal gate spreading for the dead alive that rented parking space 37. 2000
So it sounds like he's about to take off, right? He said tucking the steel toe. So he's maybe wearing some steel toe boots. He's wearing some protective gear. And what does it say? The metal gate is spreading. So the gates are opening. So it sounds like he's preparing to take off, right? Metal gate spreading could be about the opening, the gates of heaven. Because he did reference the dead alive, right? So it could be like entering the gates of heaven. But it could be about to take off, or maybe there's a play on words. The imagery I get when you say dead alive, or like partially dead, partially alive, he said that rented parking space 37, right? Who would rent, who would rent a parking space? I feel it's definitely somebody who has an obligation to be somewhere. Really, the only thing that comes to mind is work, right? So it sounds like he's referring to people that maybe work boring jobs. I don't know. We'll have to let it ride here. But, the dead alive that rented parking space 37 sounds like somebody with some sort of boring obligation, but let's let it go.
metal gate spreading for the dead alive that rented parking space 37. 2000 out the weekly under cycles to Gehenna. Gets him floating over 20 buses, fireproof and festive. Corners like a two.
No, I got a kind of it made me think of like Evil Knievel or so, right? He's talking about floating over 20 buses, fireproof and festive, he said. It makes me think of maybe it's something like versus, maybe he could be comparing like office life in your boring life with your rented parking space because you're half dead, half alive in parking space 37. And he said 2000 out the weekly. That's interesting. $2,000. What is it? $2,000 to cover. Are you on some sort of trip? Are you on a little road trip? And $2,000 out of your weekly pay would pay for that. Or you could be $2,000. It's 52 weeks in a year, so $2,000 weekly would get you just over six figures, which used to be that's $100,000. That used to be considered like making it in the world if you can get six figures. But, as the economy shifted, six figures just isn't what it used to be. But six figures used to mean you could live the nice suburban life with a white picket fence and a tree and a nice 2 to 3 car garage, 2 vehicles, wife staying at home, 2.5 kids, right? It meant security. So I don't think it's any a coincidence that he said 2000 out the weekly. I just don't know if I'm tying that to what it costs for him to ride versus the opposite of what he's doing. So, but I would definitely think job. But let's let it ride and listen.
Spreading for the dead alive that rented parking space 37. 2000 out the weekly under cycles to Gehenna. Gets him floating over 20 buses, fireproof and festive. Corners like a two-tired tiger, so a two-tired rider can accumulate a few excited fibers to a sign. Nose.
Corners like a two-tired tiger. I don't think the tiger is like lethargic, right? I think the tire is talking about the two tires of a motorcycle. corners like a two-tired tiger. So maybe he's saying like he's hitting corners on the bike, comparing it to a tiger, but instead of feet or paws, he's got two tires. I'm not sure if I get the second part right. The second part, what did he say? The accumulation uh, of a few excited fibers to a sign. Um, now, there's definitely, you think of the different brands like Kevlar, and there's different brands where they made for motorcycle riders, where there's a lot more fibers, which gives you additional protection just because the way that it's created. So that it protects you against tears or to get abrasion. So it's like with motorcycle jackets, they have just different material. Where they're made, they're normally much more durable. But I don't know if that's what he's getting at. I'm going to run it back just a bit here.
Got some floating over 20 buses, fireproof and festive. Corners like a two-tired tiger, so a two-tired rider can accumulate a few excited fibers to a sign.
Yeah, two-tired rider. So that kind of gives me the impression that this rider might be getting into some shit, right? He might be falling or having an accident because he's too tired. Maybe that's where the fibers come in. Maybe he's scraping on the ground while he's hugging the turn. I don't really know, but there's definitely something going on here that I'm missing. I'd appreciate the help in the comment section.
Tiger, so a two-tired rider can accumulate a few excited fibers to a sign. Knows no zen in the art of maintenance. Only if the orchestrated.
Dude, he references Zen in the art of maintenance. I don't know if you guys, if a lot of people would catch that reference, but it's supposed to be one of the most philosophical books ever, right? I can't recall the author. I've actually never read it, but it's about supposedly a long motorcycle trip, which I guess would play in here. And it's a father and son. And as they go, it's my understanding that other people kind of join their journey, but they have these very deep, like in-depth conversations about life. Zen and the art of maintenance. It's just important, but it's a more of a philosophical book than it is about actual maintenance.
Corners like a two-tired tiger, so a two-tired rider can accumulate a few excited fibers to a sign. Knows no zen in the art of maintenance. Only if the orchestrated patron saint are changing lanes, baby. Here's how a greater.
I couldn't really. Those girls look like they might be fine as hell, right? I could just by their silhouette, it's like, ooh, I kind of lost track of the lyrics.
Rider can accumulate a few excited fibers to a sign. Knows no zen in the art of maintenance. Only if the orchestrated patron saint are changing lanes, baby. Here's how the greatest.
He said the orchestrated patron saint of changing lanes. That's actually quite funny because back in the day, saints were people made saints for all sorts of different reasons, right? These patron saints. There's patron saints of nations, of cities, some that are like specific geographic areas. Some are even specific to what you do for a living, right? So you could be like the patron saint of manufacturing, right? Or like of cell phone sales. Like there's really no limit. That's where we get a lot of, you think about St. Patrick, right? Where right now, today is it today? It's St. Patrick's Day, or over this weekend. St. Patrick, this goes all the way back to the 5th century. This was a Christian missionary that was, he was a missionary to the people of Ireland. And he soon became the patron saint of Ireland. And we got St. Patty's Day, right? Think about old Saint Nick, right? Saint Nicholas. Saint Nicholas was the patron of children. And in fact, Saint Nicholas of Myra is actually where you get my look from, right? The old white bearded man, not, white bearded man, but the old white beard, right? So we get a lot of information from these really old ways of doing things. There's even what's her name? Is it Sally? There's one for music. There's an old saint for music and musicians as well. So I just think it's funny that he says that, what do you say? He's the patron saint of changing lanes, right?
And it's only as the orchestrated patron saint of changing lanes, baby. Here's how a great escape goes when you can't take your dead friends' names out your phone.
So he's struggling here. He's definitely struggling with his friend's death. What did he say? He said that you can't take your dead friend's name out of your phone. Just how sad that must be. I don't think I've ever lost well, no, I did, but I lost a family member that was really close just a couple years ago. So that definitely feels a bit different, that line. But when I was younger, I had a friend that was shot 16 times in the chest. He wasn't a close friend, but it was still a friend nonetheless. And there is a feeling with deleting someone's text messages or emails or just any connection that you had with them after death. Let me just listen to it again.
When you can't take your dead friends' names out your baby, no zen in the art of maintenance. Only as the orchestrated patron saint of changing lanes, baby. Here's how a great escape goes when you can't take your dead friends' names out your phone.
So he also referenced, it sounds like The Great Escape, and I'm not talking about way that The Great Escape, right, for swimming pools and all that. I don't know if you guys remember really it's an infamous jump scene on a motorcycle that has Steve McQueen. That's not Lightning McQueen for you young bucks, right? That's a movie. That's Cars. And no, I used to always tell the kids a lot because they always think that Lightning McQueen is named after the driver, right? Steve McQueen. And he's not. Actually, random fact, but Lightning McQueen is actually it was actually named after an animator for Pixar, which did the Cars theme, the Cars movie. That animator died in the early 2000s, and that's where that name comes from. It actually has nothing to do with Steve McQueen. But anyway, there's an old movie. This is from the late 50s, late 60s. And there's a famous scene where Steve McQueen, he jumps over a gate, this like barbed wire gate with his motorcycle, which would also tie in here. There's a motorcycle reference. A lot of people don't know that was actually, even though Steve McQueen was a really talented motorcycle rider, he actually didn't do that stunt himself. But it sounds like he's definitely referencing that. And so it's just the movie itself, it's super old school. I think it was remade as well. But it's basically he's escaping from a prison camp. But most people only know that jump scene. I know it goes around on YouTube. It's even been in a few memes, I believe. But that's where most people would jump it. I wonder if he's on a Clubman bike. That would make sense, but I really don't know. I don't know the type of bike that he used in that.
How a great escape goes when you can't take your dead friends' names out your phone.
Obviously, the play too on The Great Escape, not just the literal escape of the prison camp, but he's escaping from his friend's death. Right? He can't even take the name out of his phone, so he's just on this. It sounds like he's just going. He's just hitting the road and just trying to escape reality.
Great escape goes when you can't take your dead friends' names out your phone. Eyes and teeth, new moon on a scale that defies belief. Out your
When you say eyes and teeth?
phone. Eyes and teeth, new moon on a scale that defies belief.
Okay, like he said, he was wearing. Well, he's probably wearing a helmet, right? Well, no, your teeth wouldn't be around.
Out your phone. Eyes and teeth, new moon on a scale that defies belief. Outside what our fundamental science.
He said new moon here. There's a lot of symbolism when it comes to the new moon. And I'm sure you can find information on a new moon to justify almost anything in life, almost like astrology, right? But the new moon typically is a time to initiate a beginning or a new beginning, right? Something to be mindful of too is when a new moon occurs, it typically begins a new cycle. But it's also known to end, obviously, the cycle that came before it, which would be very symbolic in this, right? And not just the cycles to Gehenna. It could be talking, the literal motorcycle, but ending a cycle or a period in his life. and starting a new beginning without his friend. And I'm really curious to know about this friend and how impactful he was on his life, or who this friend is.
Escape goes when you can't take your dead friend's names out your phone. Eyes and teeth, new moon on a scale that defies belief. Outside what our fundamental sciences teach. Every other mighty lion asleep. Gangway, mind, eyes, mind, teeth.
You know, he said mine eyes, mine teeth, right? Earlier he said eyes and teeth.
Every other mighty lion asleep. Gangway, mind, eyes, mind, teeth.
Is that mine or mind? Because it could be some wordplay there. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the mind's eye, but the mind's eye refers to the part of your mind that allows you to visualize things, right? To see them in your imagination. So when you see something with your mind's eye, you're picturing it in your mind, right? It definitely feels like there's some meaning there, especially since his friend just passed. He could be visualizing his friend with his imagination, or visualizing what the world might be without him. But there definitely seems to be a play on words there. Again, it's called the mind's eye.
Every other mighty lion asleep. Gangway, mind, eyes, mind, teeth. Gangway, mind, eyes, mind, teeth.
Who that
Gangway,
beat?
mind, eyes, mind, teeth. The man ape translates glam through the visor. Goes in what are the
All right, he lost me with the chicks. I gotta look at the chicks for a
The
second.
man ape translates glam through the visor. Goes in what are lilies, amps, grace, Geiger, and man ray.
Ooh, what did he say there? He said the man ape.
Eyes, mind, teeth. Gangway, mind, eyes, mind, teeth. The man ape translates glam through the visor. Goes in what are lilies, amps, grace, Geiger, and man ray. Crammed one player.
Yeah, he said a lot there. So he said the man ape, right? So man ape. Maybe he sees himself kind of what we call an urban, like wilding out, right? Wilding out. No pun intended with what's his name? Oh boy, that has friggin' 20 babies. That was married to Mariah Carey. Nick Cannon, right? He's got the show Wildin' Out. But wilding out is, you're going back to your primitive state. You're having fun with it, or and it sounds like what he's doing, right? The man ape translates glam through the visor, so it sounds like he's got a helmet on, right? And they're showing that in the video, he's riding around with a helmet on. I'm picturing him more on this picturesque country landscape, but they're showing him in more of an urban setting here. But he's interpreting everything in the world through the visor, right? What did they say? He said he goes in water lilies, right? I'm pretty sure that's what I heard.
Goes in water lilies, amps, grace.
Yeah, it goes in water lilies. I don't think he's talking about like a pond, but he's probably talking about a puddle, right? So, you kind of get this impression that he's, it's like this animal nature. He's a man ape just looking at what's ahead of him through his visor, and he's splashing through puddles, and he's just kind of going in the zone. Amscray is that's a little bit different of a word. I think if I'm not mistaken, Amscray is scram, right? That's he's using Pig Latin. I believe that's what he's saying. And it sounds like he's referencing some different art here. He says Geiger and Man Ray. Man Ray may be tying to Man Ape, but Man Ray and Geiger, these are, Geiger he's known for painting very dark, very unusual art, right? A lot of artists, Korn, I believe, used them. But artists back in the day used them for their visuals, right? The visuals of their like CD art. I'm probably dating myself with the cover of your CD, but they do movie work as well. In fact, I think Geiger is the one that came up with the Predator, the design for Predator. I know he had something to do with that. So it sounds like he's referencing him. Man Ray was also an artist. He's an artist more associated with work that he's done overseas. But it's kind of funny because when I've read about Aesop Rock, I believe he's actually really into art. I know he studied art, but I think it's visual art. So I just think it's really interesting what he said, and that he's definitely got the pig Latin going with amps.
Man, ape translates glam through the visor. Goes in water lilies, amps, grace, Geiger, and Man Ray. Crammed in a one-player campaign. Blinker like a hollow bonfire over Sam Hain. Span with a praying hand. Goes in water lilies, amps, grace, Geiger, and Man Ray. Crammed in a one-player campaign. Blinker like a hollow bomb.
Crammed in a one-player campaign. He almost made it sound like it's a video game, right? A one-player video game. But he's by himself. He could be saying that he's lonely too, but it sounds like he's in this really primitive state, right? He's an ape man. He's viewing his helmet. He's got animal tendencies. He's going wild. He's splashing in water, right? So it definitely sounds like he's wilding out here.
Grace, Geiger, and Man Ray. Crammed in a one-player campaign. Blinker like a hollow bonfire over Sam Hain. Span with a praying hands mandate. Blinker like a hollow bonfire over Sam Hain. Span with a praying hands mandate.
He said blinker. What's that? Blinker like the fire? What do you say?
Blinker like a hollow bonfire over Sam Hain. Span.
Damn. Sam Hain, what's the best way to describe it? It's almost like, I don't know if any of you guys have kids and you might have saw the movie Coco. Oh, put the picture a la ofrenda, Mama Coco. Oh, real alablijes. They live caquitos everywhere, right? But they're talking about Dia de los Muertos, or the Day of the Dead, right? And it's very similar. It's where they have a passage where your loved ones can come back in theory. And Sam Hain is kind of similar to that, but it's like the Celtic New Year, right? It's the end of summer. It's the end of their harvest season, but it also begins winter. So again, he's talking about cycles, which would tie into motorcycles, but also the cycles in the name of the song. The cycles, or winter, is the one that's associated with death. But on this day, they believe that there's never been a closer time when the living and dead, really the distance between them was really thin. Supposedly, the spirits of the dead are able to visit the living, very similar to Day of the Dead. So, lighting up the road, blinker. So his blinker is lighting up the road. I imagine it's all dark. He's got that like yellowish red hue from a motorcycle blinker. And that hue is making him think of a bonfire over this Sam Hain. That's just incredible that he's able to get that type of story out with like 6 words. And it takes me like 6 minutes to describe what he's saying or can possibly be saying. But that's just so intellectual, but it's just so well written. It's very poetic. I really, as I continue to dive more into Aesop Rock's catalog, it's just, you could appreciate the wordplay so much more. It's not just wordplay. It's not just commonalities and basic words, but he really is painting a visual that you can't just understand the meaning, the vocabulary, and understand what he's saying. He's kind of positioning it in a way where it really is up for interpretation, but there's an overall theme, it sounds like. Man, just incredible work.
Gangway, mine eyes, mine teeth. The man ape translates glam through the visor. Goes in water lilies, amps, grace, Geiger, and Man Ray. Crammed in a one-player campaign. Blinker like a hollow bonfire over Sam Hain. Span with a praying hands mandate. Bars an extension of the arms. Sitting instead of being farmed.
Oh, instead of being farmed, like you farm out your work, right? You basically bid yourself out to the highest bidder. When you work for a corporation. So it sounds like he's tying that in with the renting out parking space 37, right? But what I love was he said the bars are an extension of your hands. or extension of your arm. So you're like becoming one. Like he is just in the zone. He's becoming one with the bike. And I love the visual there. But he said span where the praying hands mandate. I don't know if you guys know he's talking a lot about art here. And I don't know if you guys know, everybody knows the praying hands, right? A lot of people put it on their chest or their back, and they use the emoji, right, of the praying hands. But a lot of people don't actually know where that comes from. This is actually, it's supposedly a true story, and it goes all the way back to the 15th century. That supposedly there was this guy, I forget the guy's name, but he had like almost 20 kids. They were super poor. The guy spent like the majority of his day, like 16 to 18 hours a day, trying to provide for these kids. I think he was a blacksmith. And the way the story goes is that the two oldest kids really wanted to go to college. And they knew there was no way that their dad could afford to do it with his other obligations. So they come up with this idea. And the one brother says, look, this is what we'll do. One of us will sacrifice. We'll flip a coin. So the person who wins will go away to college, and the other person will go down into the mine, right, and slave away. And he'll take that money and he'll use it to put the other through school. Once one finishes school, he'll either take the proceeds from or profits from working and pay for the other to go into school, or if it didn't work out, he'll go back to the mines and continue working and saving money. And then I guess the story goes, the one brother, I think it was like Albert and Albrecht, some whatever, it doesn't matter. But supposedly the way the story goes is the one brother starts making a name for himself. He's in college. He's doing really well. He starts making a name. He finishes college, and he becomes this like really well-known sculptor, working with wood, and he comes back to his town. Everybody's like, yeah, he's back. He made a name for himself. He's doing well. And he goes, okay, brother, it's time for you to, go to school. Now I'm going to take care of you. But his brother can't. And his brother just holds up his hands, and his hands have been crushed while working in the mine several times. Each finger had been crushed. He could barely hold on to what he's doing, let alone paint or be a sculptor. And, all the family is, they're all sad, but really there's a moral to the story, right? The moral of the story is that no one can do something completely on their own. A lot of people have to struggle to get you where you are. And a lot of people actually know the work, right? The guy, not Albert, but Albrecht. Albrecht is Albrecht Dürer. A lot of people, you might know him if you're really into art, because you can find his work in museums. He's done a lot of work with watercolor. So anyway, he actually came up with some artwork that was really for his brother Albert. And he drew his brother's abused hands, and he put them together. And it's really just the original art was only called Hands, but it shows the, like, not just a poor person's hands, but him slaving away. But it really means so much more when you understand the context of why his hands were like that. And it became really popular. And basically over time, people just kind of changed the name to the praying hands. So that's actually where it comes from. But again, there's a moral to the story that nobody makes it alone. But if you understand those praying hands, again, it's kind of an emotional story that has a lot of context. A lot of people don't seem to know that. So what does he say? Let's run it back.
Campaign blinker like a hollow bonfire over Sam Haines span, but I'm praying hands mandate bars and extension. extension of the arms. They're mutating instead of being farmed. Tonight beneath the marmalade Venus, haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud.
He said tonight beneath a marmalade Venus. For those that don't know, Venus is one of the planets, right? Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and our baby Pluto, which now they call it like planet 134, I think. 1344, 134. But planet is it's considered a dwarf planet now. I was really interested. I saw that Aesop Rock actually has a song called Bring Back Pluto. We haven't gotten into it yet, but it could be really interesting to dive into. If you're fans of Aesop Rock, I always recommend like the video, but subscribe to the channel as we continue diving into his work. But Venus, it's covered by a bunch of thick clouds, so it's actually really hard to see. But you can see that there's a yellow-white color to Venus. And in fact, if you go back, when you start talking about symbolism is something I love, as well as like symbolism in dreams. I love reading on that stuff. But symbolism, you can interpret it so many different ways, just like art. And we start talking about like ancient Mesoamerica. Venus actually meant death. Death and resurrection, or death and reborn, also playing into the cycles theme that he has going. It's just, that dual nature, those cycles, I think it's something to remember when we hear what he's saying. Let me run it back just a bit here.
Then I
also want to see the girls, I ain't gonna lie.
Flare campaign, blinker like a hollow bonfire over Sam Haines span, but I'm praying hands mandate. Bars an extension of the arms. They're mutating instead of being farmed. Tonight beneath the marmalade Venus, haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud between us. Going for Jack.
Ooh, what did he say there? So tonight, he said the marmalade Venus. So, we get Venus. We understand Venus used to be known for death and resurrection. A lot of people, the only thing they feared more, supposedly, was a solar eclipse than when Venus would align in a specific way that would really kind of terrorize them because they didn't understand the meaning. I wonder what it means too, because he's mentioned the new moon before. There's so much, and it's so hard to really understand where he might be going. Because again, with symbolism, there's just a lot of symbolism that's based on the connection with Venus and the moon, especially a new moon.
Bars an extension of the arms. They're mutating instead of being farmed. Tonight beneath the marmalade Venus, haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud between us. Going for Jack.
Haunted mowers?
Bars an extension of the arms. They're mutating instead of being farmed. Tonight beneath the marmalade Venus, haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud between us.
Haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud between us. Man, what? It's just an incredible writing, right? He's talking about haunted mowers. It makes me think of the smaller engines, right? The motorcycles have, but chewing up every bit of mud of dirt or earth as it races down the stretch, right? I also think it's really interesting that he has these women dancing. And it's kind of burlesque, very dark, very airy. That kind of plays with the video. But to me, it kind of speaks to where his mind is. Maybe not he's just trying to think of one thing and he's just going, and it sounds like he's riding. It doesn't sound like he has any particular place to go, but he's just trying to get away from his feelings. And a lot of times that's how women are used, unfortunately, right? But when someone goes to a strip club or a burlesque show, they're normally just trying to stop thinking about their regular life, and they're trying to be somewhere else. So I think these women are too, right? They're probably thinking about paying tuition, or I guess they're not strippers, but there's a mindless. They're dancing, right? It doesn't seem like they're doing it for any specific reason. There's a simplicity in that. Just like driving a motorcycle or taking a drive in your car when you're really upset. You just need to get away for the moment. But I think music in general does that. but also I think this burlesque, these strippers, they just kind of they take you away from where you are as well. I think that's just important to note as we see this, because at first glance, it doesn't seem like it goes well with the song, but I think there's just a deeper meaning behind that.
Mandate bars an extension of the arms. They're mutating instead of being farmed. Tonight beneath the marmalade Venus, haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud between us. Going for Jag Dotson, Corvette Lotus, full cones you can slalom when your Zorlax focused via mechanical.
Ooh, that was just sick. He said going forward. He said Corvette, Lotus. Right? He's naming the cars, the different cars, and he says they're all cones. They're all cones you can slalom, right? Slalom is like when you're skiing, right? You're going down a winding course, right? You got the flag poles, you're zigzagging, you're bobbing and weaving, and you're going through all the cars and all the obstacles while you're skiing. He's not skiing; he's obviously on a motorcycle, but it's you're dodging these obstacles as you're going. And I think he referenced Zorlock. Zorlock is known for their skateboards, right? They're a skateboard company, but I think that they're known for their art, the art on the skateboards. I know it's like really dark, creepy. These are really classic boards, the Zorlock board. Let's listen to it again, though.
Haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud between us. Going for Jag Dotson, Corvette Lotus, full cones you can slalom when your Zorlax focused via mechanical Dartmoor, Frankenstein.
Yeah, when your Zorlax focused, I think he's talking about like when his skateboard is focused. So when you're in the zone, you could do these things very similar to what he's doing now on the motorcycle.
Full cones you can slalom when your Zorlax focused via mechanical Dartmoor, Frankenstein poorly. It's sanctioned by a new Yank Yorkie who knew that any moment.
Wait a minute. It goes to talking about skateboards. So I believe he's talking about bikes here, right? He said a Dartmoor, and it sounds like it was built bad. I think he said Frankenstein.
Venus haunted mowers chewing every glowing yard of mud between us. Going for Jag Dotson, Corvette Lotus, full cones you can slalom when your Zorlax focused via mechanical Dartmoor, Frankenstein poorly. It's sanctioned by a new Yank Yorkie who knew that any moment he could.
So it's sanctioned by him. He approves of its use, or at least by New York Yankees, or he said Yorkie. But it definitely sounds like he's referencing himself in New York. Approving of the Dartmoor. Dartmoor is like it's not like the Huffy, right? Huffy was like a general cheaper bike. And I don't think a Dartmoor is necessarily that, but it's supposed to be the best value for a good bike, right? There's different brands that they position themselves, and I mean like market position. And I think Dartmoor, it's a very popular brand because of the value that it offers. Sounds like he might have gotten a bad one, or he said it was put together poorly, or Frankenstein poorly. Kind of sounds like it's pieced together, right?
Frankenstein poorly. It's sanctioned by a new Yank Yorkie who knew that any moment he could lose it to the decoupage suicide flooring.
Yeah, he's talking about the bike, but it sounds like he could also be talking about his motorcycle, right? Decoupage, he said. That's just like effects that are they're really decorative that you can use in flooring. But I think the suicide flooring, he's talking about the street, the asphalt, right? Any moment you could lose it and die when you're on a motorcycle. But, it sounds like that's a risk he's willing to take, and he's just kind of zoning out, and he's struggling with the death of his friend, and he's just in this place where he's just trying to visualize something to take him away from where he is. So I don't think death isn't his concern in that sense. Death might be a concern in the death of his friend. He's concerned with the death of his friend, but I don't think he's worried about the death of himself.
Knew that any moment he could lose.
Man, the cycles, right?
Into the decoupage suicide flooring and still to keep his fuel tank portly. The 35-year-old.
Portly is like fat, right? Or full. So he's keeping his fuel tank full despite knowing that it's a suicide mission sometimes being on a bike.
Suicide flooring and still to keep his fuel tank portly. The 30-odd-year-old gear stank Charlie. The scarf dank mom.
Thank Charlie. think Charlie. I wonder what. I don't know the name of his friend that died. Um, let me know what you guys think. I wonder. It might tie in, but I think it's reaching. I don't know if you guys remember. You guys remember the guy named Charlie who it could tie in. The guy he put together a bunch of different movies. Is there is Long Way Up, like Long Way Down, Side to Side. He put together a movie, and he's basically traveling across. I want to say it's the UK, but the guy's name is Charlie, and I guess he does put together the bike as it collapses during the road trip. But and I don't know. He could be. Let me know. Let's run it back here.
Knew that any moment he could lose it to the decoupage, suicide flooring, and still he keep his fuel tank portly. The 30-odd-year-old gears thank Charlie. The scarf thank
the 30-odd-year-old gears. I'm really starting to think that he could be on that Lightning, that Cushman bike that we reference. Again, they were only produced in 1964. I'm willing to bet that Steve McQueen had one, or Steve McQueen used one in the movie that he referenced. Because there definitely seems to be a tie. I'm not the best with the history of motorcycles outside of like Harley Davidson and some of that, but the Cushman was only produced in 64. So if it's 30 years old, right, that would take you to 94. But he said so odd years. That could you're roughly around 2000. I'd be really interested to know when this song came out. Was it roughly around the millennium? Was it roughly around 2000? Because that would make sense if it's a 30-year-old bike that he referenced earlier. But anyway, the guy, Charlie, I can't remember the name. I think it's either Long Way Up or Long Way Down. But the narrator and the main dude is Charlie, and he has a bunch of real life problems while he's on these rides, right? I know his wife gets sick, and she's like cancer, and she's like, no, you got to keep riding. And so he could be referencing that. He could be saying thanks, Charlie, because Charlie kept showing him how to stay focused on being on the road, or maybe how to keep together his bike. But I don't really know the reference. I was thinking Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, maybe playing on, I was going to say playing on kids and the youth, like the propeller hat, but I don't think he's going there. But I kind of really lost. Let me know, guys, what you guys think in the comment section of who this Charlie character could possibly be. Let's just run it back and let it ride here. Active hubris. Hubris is like it's somebody who's like overconfident to the point that they're arrogant, right? They don't think they could do any wrong, but normally they're very flawed, and oftentimes they don't really see that. So that would be an act of hubris.
It was less of an act of hubris, more a Lonely Hearts Club at the helm of a magic bullet, away on a relentless bid for rarefied inertia, rattle trap forks married to the patch. It was less of an act of hubris, more a Lonely Hearts Club at the helm of a magic bullet, away on a relentless bid for rarefied inertia.
So he's got a lot of confidence. So he's saying it was less of an act of hubris. He wasn't trying to be destructive, maybe. It was more of the Lonely Hearts is like you're trying to find it's a club for people looking for a friend or a lover, right? So he said it was less of an act of hubris, right, of confidence or arrogance. It was really trying to find his friends or get him closer to his friend. Just something on a whim, maybe. Help me out if you guys. Let me know how you guys are interpreting that part there. Let's get it right back to the beginning here. I love how his voice is so clear in this part as well. Want to see the name on the bike. Oh, it's a Honda. I thought maybe it would show something here that was referencing these older bikes.
It was less of an act of hubris, more lonely hearts club at the helm of a magic bullet. Away on a relentless bid for rarefied inertia. Rattle trap books married to the patchy terra firma. Ursa minor getting warmer. I crowbar.
Whew.
Rattle trap books married to the patchy terra firma. Ursa minor getting warmer. I crowbar into the pack and order.
Bro, that's yeah, I don't even know. You could probably tell that line to 100 people, and I think 98 of them would look at you like, what? Like, what is he really saying
Married to the
here?
patchy terra firma. Ursa minor getting warmer. Out inertia. Rattle trap books married to the patchy terra firma. Ursa minor getting warmer. I crowbar into the pack and order. The dreck between the whores and Betty Borders. Hug another.
The inertia, right? Inertia is that, some object is going to continue on its pathway unless something causes it to change, right? It's part of Newton's law of motion. So I think he's referencing that. But what did he say there? He also says patchy terra firma. So it sounds like just dry patches of the earth. Ursa Minor, right? Is that what he says?
Warmer. I crowbar into the pack and order. The drip magic bullet. Away on a relentless bid for rarefied inertia. Rattle trap books married to the patchy terra firma. Ursa minor getting warmer.
Ursa Minor is translated typically to Little Bear, right? It's a constellation in the northern sky. You got the Great Bear, you got Little Bear, and then you see the handle of the ladle, and that's the Little Dipper, which is actually kind of funny because we did a breakdown at Aesop's Rock. Aesop's, what song was that where he's talking about tipping the ladle, and I thought it was a reference to pouring, which went with the overall theme of the song, to pour, when he said tip the ladle back. But I just think it's funny that he's referencing the ladle again, but it's referencing the Little Dipper, right? Some people just simply might call it or refer to it as the Northern Star as well, right? It's like regarding Polaris, but it stays in the same place in the sky, so it's a reliable way. If you're traveling north, it's one of the most reliable ways to travel, right? You follow the North Star because you know it's always in the same place, which could, he's on this trip. Sounds like he's definitely referencing that. But just, man, such a sick way there's so much wisdom in what he's saying.
More lonely hearts club at the helm of a magic bullet. Away on a relentless bid for rarefied inertia. Rattle trap books married to the patchy terra firma. Ursa minor getting warmer. I crowbar into the pack and order.
So he's getting warmer. Maybe his destination is the North Star. That's why he's just going and going, like with no destination in place. But it definitely sounds like he said he's getting warmer, which typically means that you're getting closer to that end goal, right?
To the patchy terra firma, Ursa minor getting warmer. I crowbar into the pack and order. The dreck between the whores and Betty Borders.
The pecking order, it's normally spoken to with birds, right? That means that, right, each bird that is a higher social status, if you would, can peck the bird below it. But we get the word of a pecking order in our society comes up often.
Getting warmer. I crowbar into the pack and order. The dreck between the whores and Betty Borders. Hug a double yellow spine. Now be rubber like.
He said the dreck between the whores, right? The whores and the Betty Forders. Did he say that?
Pack and order. The dreck between the whores and Betty Borders. Hug a double yellow.
The dreck means trash. So he's talking about being in the pecking order, right? He's the trash between the whores and the Betty Forders being at the top. Wow. Betty Ford, she was really involved, was one of the most involved first ladies. Right, when you talk about equal rights, she was a supporter of abortion rights. She led a women's rights movement, sex, drugs, gun control. Like, she was really ahead of her time. In fact, now this is the wife of Gerald Ford. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that. But she actually, after they left office, She actually helped bring a lot of attention to addiction because she had a struggle, I believe it was alcoholism. I'm not sure if there were other like substance abuse issues, but she has an addiction center that's named in her honor. So he's saying that he's landing in the pecking order somewhere between the trash between the whores and Betty Ford's.
I crowbar into the pecking order. The dreck between
And he crowbarred in, so he's like forcing himself in.
terra firma, Ursa minor getting warmer. I crowbar into the pecking order. The dreck between the whores and Betty Borders. Hug a double yellow spine, knobby rubber like a rat on a rope. Those little fuckers.
Hug a double yellow spine. That's the center of a like a 2-lane highway, right? Traffic is traveling in both directions when you have a double yellow line. That also means no passing. I don't know if he's playing on the passing of his friend as well. But when you hug a double yellow spine, he's on a motorcycle. You have to hug the road as you go. What did he say? He said knobby rubber, like the knobby rubber tires that you're going to use when you're going off-road that you need on a motorcycle. But he said the knobby rubber, like a rat on a rope, the grip, right? It's just gripping the rope, just like his knobby tires would grip the earth.
Borders, hug a double yellow spine, knobby rubber like a rat on a rope. Those little fuckers run on passion alone. This is the product of a DIY inadequate home. Grabbing a cabin in the fuck out of Dodge, acting a savage.
He's like grabbing a cabin and the fuck out of Dodge. So it sounds like he's getting away. He's going away to far, far away land, right? Like they say in Shrek, far, far away is like the name and the Hollywood sign. Fuck out of Dodge. You know, a lot of people don't understand. I think it's so important, especially on this channel. We like to talk about context, right? A lot of people say get the hell out of Dodge, but they don't know where it comes from. It's actually a legit place. This is Dodge City, which is in Kansas. It was previously known way back in the day as Wicked Town, but this is like back in the wild frontier days. This was a town that you had buffalo hunters, and then you had cowboys, and they would all come to this place, Dodge City, and relax, right? But it was there were saloons, there were gambling halls, brothels, there were shootouts, and this was just like a really dangerous place to be. So eventually, the town kind of established itself, and there's radio shows back in the days, and then it turned into a TV show. And they had like the town sheriff that would tell the deplorables when he was done with them to get out of Dodge. It was kind of like Will Smith throwing out Jazzy Jeff, you know, right? And that's where that get out of Dodge came from.
Fine, knobby rubber like a rat on a rope. Those little fuckers run on passion alone. This is the product of a DIY inadequate home. Grabbing a cabin in the fuck out of Dodge. Acting a savage in the shadows of Rome. Traffic amassed against insufferable odds. Fashion.
Acting a savage kind of ties in with get out of Dodge. See, understanding the context will help us understand the meaning. And it did right there, right? Acting a savage. We see a lot of connections with ancient Rome in this. And, you know, you could almost, you can wonder if acting a savage, if acting is involved in the wordplay, right? Shadow of Rome is actually a book series. I don't really see the connection with the book series, but it could be like acting in ancient Rome as well. There's definitely some wordplay. I feel like I could be missing something. I don't know that it's necessarily tying in with the Shadows of Rome. I don't know if you guys have ever read it. I've never read them in detail. I think maybe the first book I got partially through and put it down. But let me know if you guys ever read it. You might understand if there's a connection with this.
Dodge, acting a savage in the shadows of Rome. Traffic amassed against insufferable odds. Fashioning gallows out of plastic and bone. I got the motor drone.
A gallows is normally, when you're hanging somebody, right? You're hanging a criminal. If they're hung, it's like what you would draw when you're about to play hangman. It's a gallows.
Massed against insufferable odds. Fashioning gallows out of plastic and bone. I got the motor drone, walls of death splintering on me. City galvanized.
A motor drone. It's normally a track where you can test out cars or motorcycles. So he said motordrome walls of death splintering under me. So I don't know if he's going circular, in cycles, or if he's, but I think that's the reference when he talks about the motordrome.
Bikes white knuckling, bright walls of death splintering under me. All city galvanized bikes white knuckling, bright light tunnel kings tucking the devil. P.S. I wrote this on a self-destructing memo.
Ooh, all city is a graffiti term, but there's a bicycle group, or group that puts out bicycles, and I don't know if they're well known in all circles. I think they're in San Francisco. But I know all city, at least in the older sense, has to do with doing graffiti all around the city, getting your name well known. I don't know exactly how he uses it, if it's the brand, because he is talking about all city galvanized bikes, white knuckling, right? He's holding on tight. So, man, there's just
Stuck in the devil. P.S. I wrote this on a
tunnel
self-destructing memo. Tunnel kings tucking the devil. P.S. I wrote this on a self-destructing memo.
Wow. So I wrote this on a self-destructing memo. No one else is meant to see this, right? But you. Sometimes it's hard for people to open up about struggles. So it seems like he wants to share his grief, but he doesn't want to hold on to it too long, right? It's really just for the moment, as his ride is, really. I don't think he's saying like it's not worth revisiting. It's something that has to be, but it's done, and then you move on to the next stage or the next cycle. Man, that was much deeper than I thought it would be. Great writing, great visuals. At some points, I didn't think the video tied in with the song, but I think it definitely does when you think of what they might mean. And I'm sure we can probably do a breakdown of the video itself. And I wonder what they're looking over. It's kind of distorted, so I can't really see what town or what city based on the skyline. But man, just an awesome track. And if you guys are fans of Aesop Rock, I've definitely become a fan, and we're breaking down his music and we're starting to go back in his catalog. If you guys are fans and like the intellectual breakdowns where we try to determine what he's talking about, understanding the context, man, show some love, like the video, but also subscribe to the channel, share it in your groups so we can build the channel out and we can do more of these songs and continue diving into his work. There is a folder. If you go under breakdowns and reactions, there's a folder dedicated to Aesop Rock, and there's a variety of tracks there from Garbology down to Pizza Alley and Kirby, and ones that we've done really in-depth breakdowns just like this. We'll see you guys on the next video.